Welcome back to the Fantasy Heat Seekers podcast. We've got the three-way going on tonight. Taylor has finally made time for Brad and I and has come back onto the show. We are very happy. These three-man podcasts are some of our favorites to do. But before we get into this, I would like Taylor to kind of explain why he has been so busy here of late and hasn't been able to jump on the podcast. He has some new stuff going on. So, Taylor, why don't you say hi to everybody and tell them what you've been up to?
Hello everyone. It's great to be back. It's nice to feel wanted from Brad and Rick here. Depending on what Rick's talking about, I had a baby, so that's been keeping me busy. I assume he's talking. I have recently started writing Sports Illustrated Bingo Maven. So it's their specific site dedicated to Bengals coverage. Which sounds terrible for non-Bengals fans. It probably is. Been a fan my whole life. So one of the prerequisites was you have to watch every game on Sunday. I already do that. So been doing that for a couple months, contributing a couple pieces a week there, in addition to the stuff for RotoHeat. It's been a lot of fun. Dabbling in some non-fantasy writing, and coming back and doing some RotoHeat stuff, more dynasty and redraft thinking. So
no, it's really cool. Either way, it's. Sports Illustrated is a little bit bigger than RotoHeat, so even getting your foot in the door and whatnot, we're real proud of you. So
thanks.
Wanted to say that, and then Brad is possibly going to have news next week, so we'll just wait until that news comes out. But Brad may also have some news, and maybe he'll do a full dance for you next week. So
that was a shimmy,
right? If the news is positive, I think Brad needs to do a full-on dance. Maybe do like the evolution of dance. You remember that viral video?
I was thinking more Chris Farley Chippendales.
No, I don't think we want that. Our viewer base is not big enough to sustain that type of hit.
I think our Cali fans would love it.
Yeah, but we'll have to save that for the end of the show then, because those guys always Taylor, you haven't been on here for a while, but Brad and I have been trying our best to keep these shows to an hour, right? Last week was the first time that we got done in an hour and 15. But it's like we get close to being done, and we're about to sign off, and then all of our California followers jump on right at that time and start chatting. And it's like, you guys, I tell you. And they're like, yeah, we just got done with dinner. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go to bed. But
we'll see what we can do tonight.
On this show tonight, what we are going to talk about is a little bit of Week 9 stuff in NFL news. We're going to talk about Week 10, what to look forward to this week. We have six teams on bye this week, so a little rough for some rosters. And then we are going to talk about some rookies that have broken out over the last couple weeks that we talked about breakout rookies in like week 4 or 5. Some of them guys have not sustained, and other guys that hadn't broke out have. So we're going to chat about that a little bit. And we also had this topic that came up in a conversation that Brad was having about, are guys really untouchable? And I don't care if you're talking redraft or dynasty. Should anybody on your fantasy team truly be untouchable? So we're going to discuss that a little bit too. So Brad, you got some news pulled up for us, ready to go?
Yeah. At this point, there's not a ton of exciting stuff going on. But there are a few things. Today, Des Bryant alerted in the next 2 weeks he's start trying to get back in the league. For whatever that's worth. Last year he had a bit of a short stint with the Saints after Dallas cut ties with him. But there are some teams with injuries that may take a gander at him. You guys think Des has anything left in the tank at this point?
No.
Rick? Tyler? Anybody? Des is done. At 31, he's done, eh?
I'm trying to make sure these the volume here on our stream is going good. So I don't know. He's obviously not going to be Dez of the past, but I didn't think Emmanuel Sanders was going to come back from injury at 30, so I guess I'm not ruling anybody out at this point. Um, but yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not going to rush out to the waiver wire to grab him or anything like that. I'll let somebody else waste that spot, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had a little bit of production if he did come back.
Yeah. Okay. Next, Redskins did activate Darius Geis from IR, so he'll come back so he can get hurt again. Mm-hmm. At this point, I don't necessarily know why Washington would want to risk him the rest of the season, but they're starting their young guys, so maybe they want to see if he can gel. Are you guys interested in Darius Geis at this point, the rest of this season, looking forward, or are you guys just thinking maybe next year, if anything? Taylor?
I think from a dynasty perspective, he's interesting because you would think his value would be low. Unfortunately, his owners are probably the people that took him second overall, maybe third overall, in their rookie drafts, and so a lot of those owners have been holding on to him through the injuries, so they're not looking to cut ties with him now. So unless it was at a severely discounted price, I'm not interested in buying a dynasty. For redraft, I just think there's so much risk there for probably a pretty small reward. I don't think he's going to take over the lion's share of carries necessarily either because AP is not going anywhere. So I think he's more just hopefully he stays healthy and flashes a little bit this year and can see what he does in a full season next year.
Yeah.
I am definitely interested because this was a guy that was, highly touted, but he hasn't got much action since he came into the NFL. And I was actually thinking today, I'm in a spot where I'm third in a league. I'm a win behind the leader, and I'm trying to get one of them top two spots, and I'm adding depth at this point. And I thought about offering my late first for Darius Geis just in case he comes back and kind of explodes. I am definitely curious as to how they're going to use him because this is almost, it's a year and a half of NFL time that they've paid him and haven't really got anything out of him. So, at some point you got to get your money's worth. So I think the first couple games they'd probably ease him back in, but maybe towards the end of the season he would get that workload. But I feel bad for the guy. He has not been lucky whatsoever since he got drafted, and I just hope that he can at least stay healthy, even if he never gets a full workload, but at least have a chance to show some of his talent if these injuries haven't zapped him too much.
Absolutely. We're going to stick with the Redskins. They decided to start Dwayne Haskins in Week 11. I was pleasantly surprised with his Week 10 performance. He wasn't terribly inefficient, didn't toss a bunch of interceptions. So they're going to keep rolling with him, even though Callahan kind of wanted to go back to Case Keenum. Case Keenum still looks like he's not really ready to go. So they're going to go with Haskins. How did you guys feel about his previous performance, and do you guys feel like this is good for them to keep going with him the rest of this season, Taylor?
Yeah, I think when you've got a team that's going nowhere fast and you just sunk some draft capital into a rookie quarterback, you kind of have one of two options of play him right away and throw him to the Wolves or let him learn a little bit behind another quarterback. And based on what we've seen from him this year, it looks like he could benefit from some marinating and learning from a veteran quarterback. But unfortunately, it's just the situations he's been put in this year have been pretty rotten as far as being thrown into the middle of games and kind of being yanked around a little bit. So I'm encouraged that they're finally naming him a starter, and hopefully he stays there the rest of the year, just to mainly get valuable reps and build some rapport with, he already knows Terry McLaurin, obviously, but gelling a little bit more with his teammates there. I don't think the Redskins are necessarily considering taking another quarterback early on, I wouldn't think, but they need to know what they have in Haskins sooner rather than later. And I'm encouraged that they're hopefully going to stick with him and not pull him back again and start Keenum once he's healthy.
Yeah. What about you, Rick?
Man, I don't know. There's certain situations where I feel like you are just killing a young quarterback by putting them in, and I have a hard time figuring out if I think the the talent around him, there is some. It's not like they're completely void of talent. Um, but is it going to hurt him more than it helps him? I don't know at this point. That defense definitely doesn't help, and what that does is now he's playing from behind and has to throw more, and that can be troublesome for a young quarterback because then that's when the mistakes happen. Normally, I feel more comfortable with those young quarterbacks when they have a team that can at least run the ball a little bit, or maybe their defense is at least solid enough to keep the games close so you can run the ball. And I just don't know that Washington can do either of those things, which means this kid's just throwing, and that's when you can really wreck a kid's confidence. I mean, look back to the, like Kaiser in Cleveland. Like, they didn't have anything to play for, but Kaiser had to throw a ton, and he made a bunch of mistakes. And he was a guy that people at least thought had some upside, and now we don't. I mean, Packers only kept him for a year, and then they moved on from him. And what is he with the Raiders now? As the backup there or something? But it's just, I feel like you can wreck those young guys real easily because the game's just so much faster. And if you don't have all that, if you don't have the right stuff in place, it can be more detrimental. But um, I think the kid could be good. I didn't have the separation between him and Kyler Murray as big as a gap as a lot of people did. But think of Rosen in Arizona last year. Like, Rosen could have been good, but that whole situation was just a mess. And that's what I see in Washington kind of right now.
Yeah, that was kind of my fear as we were talking. It made me think, a new staff comes into Washington next year. What's to say they don't go, okay, well, this isn't our quarterback, so we're going to trade him off. I mean, Arizona set that precedence now where now you got to think about that when a team drafts quarterback and moves on from the coaching staff. Oh, well, is this kid going to get thrown under the bus next year? And I don't know. Maybe this will be a good a good opportunity for him to showcase his talents for the next staff or for the next team or whatever. But yeah, I hope the best for him. I think he's got a lot of talent. He just doesn't have a lot of talent around him, especially on that offensive line. I think they only have one offensive lineman in Brandon Scherf, who was a high draft pick.
Is it Trent Williams?
He's not playing. He's still hurt.
He hasn't played yet?
Well, no, he couldn't pass his physical because he had a brain tumor again or whatever. He's still.
I remember now.
So they're still, they got Morgan Moses on the right side as the right tackle and Brandon Scherf as the right guard. But other than that, it's kind of a patchwork left side, which is rough because that's their blind side.
Trent Williams definitely would have helped if he could have came back and played.
Absolutely. We do have two other pieces. One is kind of a sneaky under the radar move that happened today. Seattle had waived Gary Jennings, who was a rookie fourth rounder this year, wide receiver out of Virginia. The Dolphins claimed him, and I think that's kind of a sneaky possible dynasty future type thing. With Preston Williams going down for the rest of the year and Devontae Parker being kind of meh. Like this round pick by the Seahawks out of West Virginia, didn't show a ton in the preseason, but he was he had a little bit of talent coming in, so. Kind of intrigued to see that type of move. Like he definitely has the opportunity to jump in Miami and get some reps. What did you guys think about Gary Jennings early on? Did you guys have any thoughts on him? Did you like him, not like him, Taylor?
Yeah, I would say he wasn't one that I focused on. I did my off-season film grinding sessions. I was intrigued by his athleticism and just kind of his raw numbers. His production was pretty good in college. The draft capital fourth round's not bad. I get a little more excited about that than someone that's an undrafted free agent, for example. I think going to Miami is kind of has its pros and cons. You've got a pretty rough situation there offensively, where I doubt he comes in and lights the world on fire. But then again, he doesn't have a ton of competition. So if he could just come in and kind of what I was talking about with Haskins and just get some reps, he hasn't really played. I don't know that he played at all this year in a regular season game for Seattle. So if he can get some of those opportunities to kind of see what NFL gameplay is like, I think he's a guy that should stick with that team until next year, and then who knows what that quarterback situation will look like a year from now. I think he's an intriguing option for sure as a deep stash.
What about you, Rick?
Yeah, I wasn't like it's funny because the guy that he is kind of filling in for, both of those guys had like the preseason hype. There was that Gary Jennings stretch where he was hyped up, and then Preston Williams was hyped up, and now he's kind of filling that void that Preston Williams left. But um, there's two guys that were injured for the big part of the beginning of the season, and that's Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson, who have been kind of eased back in over the last game or two. I think Grant has been back a game, and Wilson's been back 2 games. And I think we're going to see them get more involved. I know a lot of people think that, Parker's just going to get more and more, um, you know, volume, but this dude was already seeing 8 to 10 targets a game. So I don't think that his volume's going to go up that much. So I think you could see a combination of Albert Williams, Jakeem Grant, and Gary Jennings get some work. I'm not sure who the number 4 was there, because or the number 5, if they had one, was before they brought in Jennings. So I don't know if there's another name that'll pop up in front of him, but there's opportunity to be had there. I'm hoping my boy Albert Wilson gets more involved, because I just think he's the best athlete they have on the field now that Kenyon Drake's gone. But man, they trade Drake, Preston Williams goes down, and then Mark Walton gets suspended for 4 games. You're already one of the worst teams in football, and 3 of your better players at the time go down, and you're just left with Devontae Parker. I'm having a lot of trouble talking tonight. Devontae Parker there, like, Kalen Ballage is not good at football. That's why Mark Walton was getting the action. Kalen Ballage, not good. I might start him this week in a league, though, because bye weeks are killing me. But I hate it, and it's just a trash team. And now, mostly complete trash talent, because what they had, they traded, or they got suspended or hurt.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing. So the last bit of information I want our resident Bengal to talk about is the man, the myth, the AJ Green is day to day, although the rumor is he's going to make his debut this weekend against Buffalo, which seems like a terrible idea. But Taylor, what say you on the AJ Green stuff? What have you been hearing? What do you think is going to happen, and what should we look forward to if it does actually happen and we see him this weekend?
Yeah, I think the last thing I had seen was yesterday. He's being touted as making his debut against the Ravens, and then today it was a no-show at practice, and he was supposed to be a full participant. So I know a lot of the beat writers were a little alarmed by that. They had said that AJ Green had experienced some. I think he described it as stiffness in his ankle area. Which I don't know if that's related to overcompensating for his foot injury or what it may be. But Zach Taylor was just calling him day to day. I have no idea what his motivations would be to risk injury. I think it was last year when he suffered a lower body injury, tried to come back from it earlier than he should have, and I think he was injured on like his first catch of that return game, and then was out the rest of the season. So I don't know why he would be rushing this back, especially being due for a payday in the offseason. And I don't know why the Bengals would be rushing it back either. But I don't know. I think obviously Friday's practice will be the big telling piece of information as to whether he's going to suit up or not. But I think there's a lot more doubt today about it than there was yesterday. So it's a mystery.
Well, and you saw the article. He wanted to stay and sign a long-term deal. Is that serious? Was he drinking or what's going on there?
I mean, I found it I mean, I could speak forever about the trade deadline, how the Bengals really botched that. But I'm not really sure why he's interested in staying in Cincinnati. I mean, from all reports, he's a loyal guy and wants to stay with the team that drafted him. But I think he also made a recent comment as far as basically either show me the money, sign me long term, or let me go. So he's not interested in any short term deals. I think from a Bengals perspective, a franchise tag would make a lot of sense, but I'm not sure that they would do that to their star wide receiver, and I'm sure that's something he wouldn't be thrilled with either. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for him, whether he plays games this year or not. But I think, I don't know. If I were him, I'd be seriously considering sitting this one out if he's not fully healthy, because we've seen the injuries creep back up on him again. He's getting up there in age, and coming back and re-injuring himself surely can't be worth it right now.
Absolutely. Rick, what's your take on the whole AJ Green thing?
Well, that's the catch-22, right? You're in a contract season, and if you don't play, then how are teams going to view you on the open market? I think that's probably why he wants to get back. Now, if I was a Bengals fan, why I would want him to get back is because, one, he helps Tyler Boyd, which helps your whole passing game. And you have a rookie starting this week because you have benched your veteran quarterback. I want the best weapons on the field for that rookie. Just like we were talking about Haskins, that team is better with A.J. Green on the field because he stretches that field. He gets Tyler Boyd more space. And, I mean, just looking from a fantasy perspective, Tyler Boyd, since the beginning of last year, averages 4 more points a game with A.J. Green on the field than with him not. And a lot of people think that, A.J. Green's going to hurt him if he comes back. I think it's actually going to help him, and it's going to help Ryan Finley. And then hopefully that all helps Joe Mixon. So from a fantasy perspective, like I'm a little maybe a little greedy. I want him to come back because I want to see how that offense is. Even if Finley doesn't play but a game, and then they decide that he's not ready, and they bring
Dalton back in, yeah.
Dalton back in, then we can see some fantasy production from everybody, possibly. So I definitely see why he would want to get back on the field, because he wants to show that he's healthy, can still play, get as much money as possible. And then if Dalton was the quarterback and they weren't planning on going to a rookie, as a Bengals fan and organization, I wouldn't necessarily care if he played again this year. But with a rookie quarterback, I would like as much talent on the field as possible.
Absolutely. So those are the big news pieces since last week's episode.
Nope. There's one more you're missing.
What am I missing?
Somebody got claimed by Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I'm done talking about this guy.
Everybody can laugh, but who watched?
No, I'm not laughing about it. I'm just like
Who watched the Monday Night Football game? Did you guys watch it?
Mm-hmm.
I was asleep.
Did you notice how that offense moved the ball? Brad?
Yeah, I mean yeah.
Okay, did you notice what happened when Tom Brady tried to throw deep? It was bad, right?
It was real bad.
It was real bad. So I'm not saying that Josh Gordon is going to go out and be a world beater. But when you're talking about the Patriots offense and the Seattle Seahawks offense, they are the polar opposite, right? Tom Brady's when Josh Gordon was playing, Tom Brady's average depth of target was 7.21 yards. He consistently gets the ball out in under 2 seconds. there were only a handful of wide receivers and tight ends that were getting less cushion than Josh Gordon, but he was still getting above average separation. But the offense moved so quick and is such a dink and dunk offense that no matter what, Josh Gordon just did not fit that offense. Now you move to Seattle. I think Russell Wilson on average depth of target is third in the league, and I think Josh Allen uh, and Patrick Mahomes were ahead of him. And Russell Wilson can move. He can get out of the pocket,
He
which
can buy some
allows
time.
which allows these guys like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and Josh Gordon to make stuff happen. And that's where I think it's just different is that all three of those guys are similar type guys. They're guys with speed and they're downfield threats. And, Lockett probably runs more routes, obviously, than DK Metcalf. But it's just if you're talking about situations, one of them was tailor made for Josh Gordon, one of them was not. Now, will it work out? I don't know. But I can tell you that I trust Russell Wilson a lot more than I trust Tom Brady when it comes to a downfield threat. Tom Brady's got one receiver that has an average depth of target of more than 10 yards. Tom Brady's average depth of target is less than Eli Manning's was before he lost his job. Now, that's not saying that Eli Manning's better, but it's just saying that offense works in 6, 7 yard chunks and not taking shots down the field. And when they do have to take shots down the field, Tom Brady's not 25, 30-year-old Tom Brady anymore. He's a 42-year-old man that can't throw downfield like that like he used to be able to. And that's why Mohamed Sanu's perfect for that offense.
Right. Well, the interesting thing to me is how they deploy him. Now, obviously, when Will Dissly went down, they haven't filled that void. I mean, they've got some tight ends and they got Jacob Hollister and things like that, but they've not really been able to fill that kind of role. So it's interesting to me where Josh Gordon fits in. I don't know that he's really going to hurt DK Metcalf. So I've seen some folks in the community concerned that DK Metcalf's going to lose some value. I don't see that happening because there were still a lot of targets from Dissly going down that still really haven't been absorbed by anybody. So if they deploy him kind of as that big in the middle type threat and not maybe on the outside, then maybe he doesn't hurt anybody's value. It's hard for me to picture what they're going to do with him.
Personally, I think he's automatically the number 2 in that offense, right? Now he's not passing Tyler Lockett because Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson have a history together. They've got a connection. But DK can really only do one thing right now, and that's run in a straight line.
Don't you disrespect DK.
Well, DK was my number 1. I love DK. I have him in a lot of spots, but he is a young receiver that's still learning the NFL. And I think that's one reason why Seattle went out and did this, because they needed that other threat that could do multiple things on the outside. But I mean, DK can run in a straight line fast, and he's a great red zone target.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about him more in the breakouts because he obviously had his best week here in week 9. But and part of that might be because he was like, oh shit, they brought in Josh Gordon. I better show that I could do some more stuff. But I think the other thing that happens is your David Moores, your Jerron Browns, those guys
disappear.
Like, you might get that random touchdown, but they're not pulling consistent targets in this offense. So I think that's where it's going to be different. But I tell you what, Russell Wilson is the best quarterback for Josh Gordon that Josh Gordon's ever played with, because all of them in Cleveland were shitty, and then Tom Brady's just not the downfield thrower. That's just not how the Patriots offense works, period.
Tom Brady's
they don't take many shots.
Yeah.
Do what?
What was it? Tom Brady's washed.
I don't know if I'd go that far. He's really good at those sub 10-yard throws, but
yeah, Pat Thorman for Establish the Run tweeted this out after the Josh Gordon signing. He said, 2018, Tom Brady posts a higher adjusted yards per attempt to Josh Gordon than anyone in his entire career, so more than Gronk, Brandon Cooks. Then in 2019, Gordon misses camp. Week 1 goes 3 for 73 and a touchdown. Week 2, they force feed AB. Week 3, he goes 6 for 83. And then weeks 4 through 6, he plays through injury, gets IR'd, and now people think he's trash. So I think he's still got something left in the tank. I'm just my main concern is the volume in Seattle. When they let Russell Wilson throw the ball, he's outstanding. But I think that team prefers to run Chris Carson and have the passing game 22 to 25 passes a game. And hopefully they're in enough shootouts with that bad defense that Russell Wilson gets to air it out. But I'm just concerned of how many games is going to be 7 targets for Lockett, 4 for Gordon, 4 for Metcalf, a couple to the tight ends. But, I mean, if he gets the targets, I think he's that big-bodied receiver in the middle of the field. Creates a lot of mismatches out of the slot. He should be fine.
Yeah, I don't. And here's the thing. One, we know that you don't need a ton of targets from Russell Wilson to be successful, especially from a fantasy perspective, because he's just so, one, accurate and efficient, and then, two, he'll take those shots down the field. You know, when you tell me Josh Gordon's 6 for 80, like, that doesn't sound like a Josh Gordon line. That sounds like a Josh Gordon line with a 42-year-old Tom Brady, but Josh Gordon will rip off them 30, 40-yard catches. Same with DK, same with Tyler Lockett. And that's why I don't think all those guys need a ton of volume to be successful. At least, Tyler Lockett is a wide receiver 1 and DK Metcalf's a wide receiver 2 right now. Maybe Josh Gordon just comes in and fits in as a wide receiver 3, and for the price that you've got him for, you'll take that right now.
I caught some flack in a league that I'm defending champ, teetering on contending for hopefully a repeat. I sold John Ross in a 2021 third or 2020 second third. I don't know. It was way out there for Josh Gordon, and I got shellacked for it in the chat because
Did you just say I'm a Bengals fan and I know John Ross is never going to do anything for me, so I've got the option of this guy that might not.
I like John Ross, but now I've got Auden Tate on my team, so I can't have them both. But yeah, I caught a lot of flack for that.
Do you really want either?
No, you don't. But it was one of those things where if you're contending and you want to take a dart throw on somebody, that's the guy I'm going to reach out to, that Josh Gordon owner who's annoyed with, him not producing the way they want him to from 2013 or whatever that was, and sell whatever you need to sell, future draft picks, late draft picks, or youth. And, this is a perfect match of a team that was not contending, that had Josh Gordon. I give him a young wide receiver that flashed a little bit this year. I get a guy that hopefully I'm able to plug into my wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 spot in a deep flex league. So I think he's like a prime candidate to go get if you're a contender. So I don't know what his future looks like beyond this year, but
I do want to say, hold up there over on YouTube. We are going to answer both of your questions in just 1 second. Did you guys have anything else on Josh Gordon real quick? Because there was something else that I saw. It's not necessarily news, but I want to mention before we move on.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. I don't have anything else.
I seen... It was in a YouTube video, and I can't remember which one. It was actually, they were talking about Josh Gordon. It was actually Pat McAfee. On the Pat McAfee show, and he was talking about how Seattle, the rich gets richer, and he's all excited about Josh Gordon going there. But that's what I was watching for, because I was like, sweet, I'm not the only one. But they also talked that apparently the Eagles have kicked the tires on Antonio Brown. Obviously, word has come out in the last week, 2 weeks, that Antonio Brown wants to get back into the NFL. What do you guys think? Obviously, it's funny that Seattle looked and grabbed Josh Gordon instead of looking at a guy like Antonio Brown. Because what that's telling you right now is that Josh Gordon is less of a nuisance than Antonio Brown. And did you ever think in your life you would kind of hear that?
Well, I think I found the report here. It said the Seahawks were interested in Antonio Brown before they claimed Gordon, and apparently Russell Wilson was pushing for it. And I think of that match, and that would have been freaking awesome. But yeah, it's interesting from a fantasy perspective. Again, same contending team. I went out and bought Antonio Brown when I could get him for a third round pick. And I'm just interested to see him come back because I think he showed, obviously, when he went to New England and in his first week with them with no prep, still played great, granted against Miami. I'm interested, though, to see like how late in the season we'll get with this, where teams are going to still kick the tires on him and bringing him in, whether they see him as bring him down the stretch run for the playoffs, or do you want that type of potential distraction going into the playoffs when your team really needs to be locked in? I'm just really interested whether it's going to be a contender that ends up biting the bullet on him, or whether it's going to be some random team that's I'm trying to think of an example of like someone that's like on the cusp, but probably not going to make the playoffs, but they think they need to make a push, like the Titans or someone stupid like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a different storyline. Brad, what are your thoughts?
Well, the talent's never been the question. I mean, everybody knows he's super talented. It's just the fact that the dude's just crazy. Um, at this point, I don't know why a non-contender would waste their time looking at him. Like in my mind, it was off season he would get signed again. Like everybody would let the news die down, and hopefully Antonio would keep his mouth shut long enough for everybody to forget about him. And I think he'd get picked up and he'd spend the off season with a team, and and everyone would go back to normal. But if somebody wants to pick him up, like if a contender's hurting at receiver, I mean, you've got like teams like Houston who have a bunch of injuries and they have crappy receivers like Kenny Stills on the roster. And, somebody like that, or somebody like maybe the Colts, that is an uncharacteristic Colts move. But T.Y. Hilton, they need some help because Zach Pascal's not a number one. I mean, there's teams that have been dealing with injuries that I could see do it. But when you hear teams like Seattle looked at them and decided to go with Josh Gordon, I mean, that tells you a lot. Seattle looks for character, sort of. Philly is a team that, I guess, if they think they're going to make a playoff run, I mean, their team doesn't seem to be able to do that this year. Like they're not consistent enough. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody kicked the tires on him and signed him. But I really thought it would kind of be in the off. He would get picked up and then spend an off season with the team, and the next year he'd kind of be back to normal or whatever normal is.
I just think there's a lot of good teams that are openly looking for wide receivers. I mean, obviously Philly was before we knew Deshaun Jackson was going to miss the rest of the year. Green Bay was rumored to be interested in a receiver. Buffalo was interested to be or named as an interested team for a receiver, which he obviously probably won't go there because he turned down that trade where he was supposed to go there, right? Before Oakland. So I think that there's going to be some team that does bring him in at some point. We haven't heard any more of all the nonsense that was going on. It's been really, really quiet. So obviously, whenever that dies down, then teams start kicking the tires on that type of thing. And if Seattle was even thinking of it, then I believe that, and if Russell Wilson's asking for him, then I have to think that some of these other quarterbacks are saying, we should probably take a look at Antonio Brown. I mean, do you think Aaron Rodgers right now is saying, you know what? Antonio Brown would look pretty nice on the opposite side of Devontae Adams. I'm sure he is.
Be disgusting.
So, okay, Hold Up There has been really patient over on YouTube. He has asked a couple questions. One of them was probably 20 minutes ago, so we want to get to these. So, first question, he says, Michael Thomas for New England's defense, Nick Chubb, and Austin Eckler. Who won?
Michael Thomas.
And make sure when you ask, let us know, are they redraft or are they dynasty? Because the answers can definitely be different. But Brad says that Michael Thomas wins. What say you, Taylor?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going Michael Thomas there. I do like to, in a vacuum, of course, I like to always consider team needs. If you really needed a running back, you could do a lot worse than Nick Chubb, obviously. But Michael Thomas is the most consistent fantasy wide receiver right now. I think he's got I think every game he's had gosh, I just saw the stat. I can't remember if it was like 80 yards or a touchdown in every game, something like that. That was with Teddy Bridgewater, who is a serviceable quarterback, but not elite by any means. He's got Breeze back in a very efficient offense. I'm a little worried about Chubb. Just thinking about this season, at least, as it relates to Freddie Soup Kitchen's play calling and return of Kareem Hunt. What will that do? Just those types of questions. I feel much better about Michael Thomas' side, I think, on that one.
Oh, and it was actually Michael Thomas and Josh Jacobs were who the ones I got.
Oh, then that's definitely that side.
Definitely, yeah.
Clear that side. I was just going to say that I agreed with both of you guys and that I agree with Taylor's point. Like, they've already come out and said, like, Kareem Hunt's going to be involved, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a 50-50, because if I'm Cleveland, like, we know they're going to have talent on the roster going into next year. They obviously have moves to make, and I think one's at head coach. I think this is a one and done Freddie Kitchen season.
Hopefully.
But like, at this point, their season's over. There's no reason to run Nick Chubb into the ground if you have a guy like Hunt. And you have to see, like, what you have in Hunt, and is he going to be a guy that you try to keep around or whatever. So definitely Michael Thomas is not only the most consistent wide receiver, he might be the most consistent fantasy player outside of Christian McCaffrey, and wide receiver is such a variance heavy position. So Michael Thomas, easy. He said the guy accepted the trade unless people veto against it. I get Josh Jacobs and Mike Thomas. Well, we're rooting for you, is what we're doing. We hope that makes it through. He said it is a standard league, so it's not a PPR league, but still, you win that. His other question was,
should he drop Terry McLaurin for Josh Gordon?
Okay, so I'll answer this one first because I've got their schedule pulled up, right? So they're on bye week 10. Washington is. Right? Make sure I have this right. They're on bye. And then they have the New York Jets in week 11. And that sounds great, right? But then he is going to be shadowed by Darius Slay in week 12 when they play Detroit. Then in week 13, he's got Bradbury against Carolina. And then he's got Zaire Alexander against Green Bay in week 14. And then week 15 and 16, he gets Philly and the Giants. So he's got a stretch there from 12 to 14 that is not a good stretch for a rookie wide receiver with a rookie quarterback. So you could think about that. Obviously, if Case Keenum comes back, it makes that a little bit easier of a pill to swallow. But that, semifinals, championship week, he gets two defenses that are easy to beat deep. So I don't know. I'll let you guys. I need to process that information I just shared. Taylor, why don't you answer? Tell us what you think.
I was hoping you'd share with me Josh Gordon's schedule too, so I could compare.
I will pull it up, but I did that because I'm less concerned about Josh Gordon's schedule than I am because of quarterback one.
Yep.
The other talent that helps space out that number one cornerback and not just keying on Josh Gordon. They also have to worry about Lockett and Metcalf. Whereas in Washington, it's just stop Terry McLaurin and whatnot. But I will pull up the Seahawks schedule here.
Yeah, I was initially going to go with McLaurin. The more I think about it, I think their rest of season might look favorable side by side. Again, we're guessing 100% on what Josh Gordon will be in that offense. We've seen the highs of McLaurin mostly with Keenum. We've seen the lows with Haskell. Josh Gordon, we're kind of projecting what we think might happen. I think I might go Josh Gordon in that case. I think he's got a higher ceiling potentially for the rest of the season. He got a rough schedule.
Okay, so week 10, his first week, which we probably don't expect much out of him in that Seattle offense, San Francisco. Then they have a bye week. And then he gets Philly, Minnesota, Rams, Carolina, Arizona. Arizona in championship week.
Yeah.
Should be an easy schedule.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and Carolina is the one that was on both. So I want to mention that Bradbury is still going to be playing for the Panthers, but we don't know who he's going to guard, and he's really the only one that we're worried about in that Panthers passing game, right? Like, he's the guy that can shut down a number one or at least limit a number one. But I don't think that those guys are going to be on Josh Gordon. I think that those guys are going to be on Tyler Lockett. So I don't think that, he's going to be facing those number one shutdown corners. And then obviously Ramsey in L.A. But again, who is he going to be on? Is he going to be on Lockett or Gordon? So I think that I go Josh Gordon in that situation.
And the question
in redraft.
Yeah, well, that was the question I had for hold up there. Is this a dynasty or is this a redraft? It's a redraft. It's Josh Gordon easily. I mean, look at McLaurin. He hasn't had a good week fantasy in a month. I mean, it's been since like week 6 since he's had any value. So I would drop him for Josh Gordon in a redraft easily. In a dynasty, I would go with Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's young, he's talented. It just makes more sense. So it's just application. Depends on where your team's at, things like that. So it varies based on your type of league. But this season, Josh Gordon obviously has the clear advantage. As long as he's got the clear advantage. But long term, obviously, McLaurin's a better upside play.
Absolutely agree with that. Taylor, anything else there?
Nope.
All right. So, why don't we talk about some of these rookies that have broken out over the last few weeks? Obviously we talked about Terry McLaurin early in the season. He did first 3 games he had 100 yards and a touchdown, and it was the first time that had ever been done for a rookie. We had Marquise Hollywood Brown, who exploded early and then had some injuries. Who else did we have early in the season that was standing out that we talked about then? Minshew. Minshew was a stud early in the season, and then he just started turning the ball over like Jameis Winston. Daniel Jones started out really good, and then kind of started turning the ball over like Jameis Winston. We had a lot of guys that showed up early that we kind of said, like, you don't go out and spend a bunch of capital on these guys because this could just be a flash in the pan. Not that they're not going to be valuable down the road, but especially in redraft leagues, like if you rely on rookies, especially guys that flash early, you can kind of bury yourself later in the season. Whereas I typically, and you guys can speak on this, like I look for that guy that's like progressively like improving throughout his rookie season. Like I like to see that like steady climb instead of like, think about it. Like Hollywood Brown probably has half to more than half of his fantasy points like in the first game.
In week 1, yeah.
In week 1. So, yeah. So we had some of those guys. Now we're going to talk about some of the guys that have stuck out over the last few weeks that could potentially help your team going into the fantasy part of the schedule. So, Taylor, who is somebody that has kind of popped for you out of the rookies over the last couple weeks?
I still am not sure where I land on this guy long term, but Devin Singletary has been somebody that every time he plays, he's ripping off huge gains, being productive. He battled some injuries also earlier this season. He had a huge game last week. Again, I don't know exactly where I stand on him long term, but when he's gotten the ball, he's produced. He's been explosive player. I think we saw last week the snap share was more in his favor than Frank Gore's. So it looks like the team's going to give him the ball a little bit more, hopefully, and they're a potential playoff team. So you've got a decent team around him that will help propel him. I think the running threat from Josh Allen, the deep ball threat from Josh Allen and John Brown all helps open things up for him. I'm going to be interested watching him kind of rest of season to see what he's able to not necessarily sustain the sheer amount of yards per touch right now, but still remain that big play threat and provide some consistent production down the stretch.
Yeah, this is a guy that I wish I was higher on because you could have got him in the early part of the second round in a lot of rookie drafts, and I did not take a shot on him anywhere.
I didn't either.
And he has looked amazing, quite frankly. And obviously, we always worry about longevity with any running back. Like, some running backs can get you 6 years, some can get you 3. And, guys with his body type, like, I'm never confident are going to be able to last real long. But then Darren Sproles is out there at like 65 after breaking like every bone in his body last year. So, I don't know anything. Um, but I wish I had this kid because I think he's perfect for that offense. Like you said, like Josh Allen's running ability opens it up. The deep pass threat that they have opens it up. And he's just, it was nice to see Buffalo actually give him the touches last week because we saw last year Miami would not give Drake the touches. They gave him to Gore. And while Gore is steady and you know what you're going to get, there's nothing exciting or fun or fantasy relevant about Frank Gore getting the ball. When Devin Singletary is getting the ball, we have excitement and fantasy relevancy out of that running game in Buffalo. So that's what I was most excited about. I just wish that I would have not been so low on him coming into the draft season last year.
Yeah, I think we kind of were that way about a lot of running backs, but I think this running back class has been surprisingly better than most thought. I know that your boy David Montgomery in Chicago's not gotten enough love, but he's looked really good when he has gotten the opportunity. Just like in college, he's making people miss. He's doing it in the NFL. And I think you're seeing more and more of that. Miles Sanders has looked good in Philadelphia in a limited fashion.
Are you going to leave anybody for me to talk about, or are you just going to name them all off?
Dude, I'm all of them. You know what? You just
Brad,
hold my drink, all right?
No, I was really glad that somebody else brought up David Montgomery, so I didn't have to. But then I was just afraid that you were going to name all of them, and then you were going to be like, "Who did you like, Rick?" And I'd be like,
Everybody you just said. Yeah, I mean, rookie running backs have been a fun surprise this year, I think.
It has been, and I think that, a lot of people, obviously, Josh Jacobs, when he gets to work, looks good. They were kind of inconsistent with his touches early in the season, and especially when they're not in a game. Like, I don't know why they just quit using their best offensive weapon, but they do. And I don't know if that's just old school Gruden, like I refuse to throw to the running back or what it is, but I would like to see him used more in the passing game for sure. Same thing with Montgomery in Chicago. I don't even want to talk about Chicago because, if they would have used Montgomery like this all year, there probably are a couple more wins in there.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having Trubisky throw it 50 times, we could have ran it 25 with Montgomery and moved the ball and kept the defense off the field. So it's really, really frustrating. That flies back. It's Wednesday.
I saw a little bit earlier. I saw it
on your shoulder. I was like,
"Oh yeah, he's just chilling with me. He's a podcast guest every week.
He's a fan."
But you talked about David Montgomery. I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't really want to because people are always like, "Oh, you're a homer," but he has looked really good over the last 2 weeks when they've given him the touches. And if you want to know how frustrating it is to be a Bears fan, when you see them give Tariq Cohen the ball on the goal line when you have David Montgomery, I lost my shit. I was like, what is this? This is the dumbest shit ever. Like, it was dumb when Cordarrelle Patterson did it, when they gave him 2 goal line carries on a drive earlier in the season. But now you're giving a guy that's 5'8" and like weighs as much as my right leg the ball on the goal line. Like, it's just the dumbest shit ever. It's just terrible coaching, and it sucks because, like, if we seen David Montgomery on a good team with good coaching, like, he'd probably be lighting it up this year. But it's his stats aren't going to um, equate his talent, I don't think, by the end of the season, just because of how bad this Chicago team is at calling plays. But
Hold on. I'll one up you. Detroit's game is on the line and they jumbo package without their best players in. I watched that game and they literally trotting Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay off with the game on the line. You're hurt. Your top running back's hurt. And you're going to throw the ball to Logan Thomas. Who? No. Come on. That's just ridiculous. Like,
that's
I was so
that's
mad.
like Freddie Kitchen with the game the other day. Chubb wasn't in on a 3rd and 6.
Critical.
They had Chubb out, and then Baker Mayfield's first read was the running back. Like, how is Odell Beckham just not your first read in that situation when you have to get a first down? Like, Odell Beckham, that's why you brought him in. You moved everything for it. But if we talk about, we can schedule a special podcast just for dumb coaching.
Yes. The ranting podcast. Yeah.
The rant. Let's just call it the rant, and we'll do it every week.
Did you see last week Freddie Kitchens trot out the punt team, take the delay of game, put Baker out there for 4th and 16 instead of 4th and 11? I was like, what? I was watching. It's like, what did I miss?
How is this guy still employed?
Yeah.
The funniest thing to me is
he said he didn't want to waste the timeout after he put the punt. He didn't want to he didn't want to waste the timeout once the punt group was out there. So he had him take a delay so he could get his offense back out there. But then it was 4th and 16. I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, the funniest thing to me is like, and so after these games, the media, and I'm not saying the media is great or anything, but the media will talk to these coaches, and the coaches act like they're the smartest people in the room. Like, we're asking you these questions because you're making stupid decisions, and yet somehow you're smarter than everybody else.
All right, I gotta get us back on track because we're gonna. You know what? We should start in a rant podcast, especially during the season. Like, do it on Tuesdays or something.
Get Anthony Leone involved.
We can get. We can have different guests like every week of just ran it out. Like, Brad, I don't know if you'll want to be a part of this because there's going to be a lot of curse words and all kinds of stuff, and I know you try to keep it clean.
I got plenty to say. I may not swear, but I've got plenty to say about stupid decisions.
So, Taylor, what were your thoughts on David Montgomery? Let's get back on track here.
Coming into this year, or what I've seen so far?
Over the last couple weeks, and how the production has kind of went up. Like, is it something you expected, or?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you in that I wish he would have, or I wish he would be with a team that would utilize him a little bit more. He's scaring me a little bit, and like trying not to be a box score scouter, but a lot of he's striking me more of like a plotter based on his final lines in some of these. There's a lot of factors. Yards per carry is an awful metric to use to determine the success of a running back. But I feel like I haven't seen a lot of explosiveness from him, which I know that wasn't exactly what he was known for. He's got great balance, good vision, doesn't have the breakaway speed. Like, those aren't any new things necessarily. But I don't know, in today's day and age with some of these freak running backs with, Chubb, who is a big guy and he's just like outrunning guys, and you got McCaffrey who's a freak, and like Montgomery's not one of those guys. Like, I don't feel like when I watch him I come away like extremely impressed and blown away, but I think he's like a really solid running back that on a decent team with a decent quarterback, I just feel like he's probably going to need somebody. He's going to be a player that like is going to need 17 to 20 touches to have a pretty decent fantasy day for you on a regular basis. And with the bell cow back kind of going extinct in a lot of ways, that worries me a little bit. But I like the player. I liked him coming out. I've kind of touched on the things I liked about him already, but I have like some concerns about if he's not getting high volume, is he going to be able to produce? Like we talked about Singletary, what he's been doing is a little unsustainable, but he's an explosive player, and with one touch he can take it to the house. And with Montgomery, I don't feel that way.
Yeah, I don't disagree that he's not he doesn't have that top line speed or anything like that. It kind of reminds me of Mixon. Bad play calling and bad offensive line. I think Mixon, if he was in a good offense, could just dominate. But in Cincy, with no offensive line, he's just like stuck. Especially once we lost Long, it was. I mean, the offensive line's been rough. It's played bad, and then just the whole offensive situation. But he makes some really, really nice plays. He's really, really elusive. He makes guys miss. He isn't gonna outrun the secondary though, but he'll run them over. I think he'll be fine with a better. He would be fine with a better offense. I think we'd see better plays. But I mean, when you really look at it, and especially from and I just put this up yesterday. I don't even know if I told everybody that I put it up, but I put up the 2019 fantasy points per touch. And when you look at a couple of the running backs that everybody wants, their stats are not good. And they need 20 touches to be successful, like Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. Not necessarily efficient backs, but can handle that workload. And not that Montgomery is Ezekiel Elliott or Leonard Fournette, but I think all those types of guys are in that range, like you're talking about. And then you have very few Alvin Kamaras and guys like that can really do damage consistently without getting that amount of workload. Um, Brad's given us like 9 different rookies that he thought were awesome. I'm gonna talk about, if you guys don't have anything else on David Montgomery, I don't want to mute you guys or anything.
I think we've talked enough about David Montgomery.
Shit, you talk shit. You talk shit. DK Metcalf, right? It's funny because before the game last week, we were talking, and I was like, this dude is already being a consistent guy that you can put in your lineup, and he's not going to kill you. Mm-hmm. He hadn't really had that big game yet, but we knew it was coming because he's been getting so many red zone targets. I think he was first in the NFL, if not first, second, going into last week in red zone targets.
It's almost like you read my article from last week.
I don't remember if I did, to be completely honest.
It's just the same thing, yeah.
Wait, I did read. Yeah, I did read your article. He was one of my
dynasty buys because of his.
Was he first or second?
On my list?
Was he first or second in red zone targets?
Tied for second.
Tied for second. Okay, so
but he had only scored 2 touchdowns. Yep.
Right. So that usage was there, and I know this stuff because when I'm making out my DFS lineups, this is the type of stuff you look for. Where's the positive regression going to come in? And with a guy getting that many red zone targets, we knew that there was a breakout game coming. It was just, when was it going to be? Obviously, it was this week in 9. And I think he put up 30 fantasy points. Obviously, that game was just a shootout. But, the people that just thought he was going to be that guy that, got 2 catches for 40 yards and whatnot, this kid's going to be dangerous. He is faster than the cornerbacks. He is bigger than the cornerbacks. He is stronger than the cornerbacks. There's not a cornerback in the NFL that, when this guy gets experience, he isn't going to be able to, beat. Not that he won't get shut down from game to game, because all wide receivers do, but he's going to be capable of beating any cornerback on any given play just because of that. I mean, he's just a mismatch for every single one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I was looking at his game log. So he's really had one year that he had less than 8 fantasy points, which 8's an arbitrary number. He had the one catch for 6 yards against Arizona. Other than that, he's been scoring touchdowns or getting 4 or 5 catches for 50, 60 yards, which is fine for a rookie. When you get a guy that has the ceiling to go 6'1", 23 and 1 any week, like, he's easy plug and play right now for me. I think the concerns about any of his like lateral agility stuff was so overblown, and he's one of those guys though that had the perfect landing spot. So you imagine him getting drafted by the Patriots. Would he be successful there? Probably not, because he's going to be just clearing things out for Edelman underneath. You've got him with the most prolific downfield passer in the league, and he can just run those straight lines and run past everyone. So I've always been high on him, and I was surprised at his 2019 consistency for the most part for a rookie. I was expecting a lot more of in a few stud games mixed in, and it's been pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've liked the most is that he's shown that he can have a floor plus the upside that comes with that. Brad, what are your thoughts?
For those of you that heard Taylor just saying what he said about kind of the big receiver, you N'Keal Harry fans, N'Keal Harry's coming back from injury. Don't get excited. Because he's big and he takes the top off the defense. He's just not. He just isn't going to get the love in New England. That we've
I got you
guys in some of our talk about him. So just a disclaimer there for our N'Keal Harry fans. Don't get your hopes up. Metcalf is what Metcalf is. I mean, the writers team like Metcalf coming out as a rookie. Probably more so than most. He's probably, I think, most of our favorite receiver in this draft class. And it shows. I mean, the way they've built the game plan, he doesn't have to do anything other than straight line, beat everybody. Tyler Lockett locks up the rest of the stuff, and then they had that could take some of the other targets over the middle. I mean, Metcalf is perfect for this system, like you guys said. So I won't beat that dead horse, but I'm a big fan of him long term too. I mean, the kid's only going to get better. His route running will get better, and and maybe you see some more stuff where he's not just going straight, but maybe they bring him, because I would love to see him develop into like a big slot receiver type player where they could move him around a little bit. Like I think he would be huge as a big slot receiver too, if he could get better at route running. I mean, the guy's got really good hands. He's very physical. Things that you would like to see at that slot position as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he'll ever be there. I think he's too athletic. But
probably. But it'd be cool to see it.
It would be cool to see it. It would be I mean, I just think well, here's the question. Is he, if you put him in the slot, are you going to have like somebody like Buster Screen or Bryce Callahan or guarding him? Or are you going to bring in are you going to have like Detroit? Are you going to have Slay cover him out of the slot or Ramsey in LA? Like, how are you going to?
At that point, I mean,
dynamic.
And it creates a mismatch for your other guys on the outside. I mean, especially if you're a team like Seattle and you keep Josh Gordon for more than a year, then you've got Lockett on the outside, Gordon on the inside or on the outside, and and DK being double teamed. Well, then you're leaving single coverage for somebody. I mean, it just makes mismatches, which obviously the coaches want to find. So I'm not saying it'll ever happen, but it'd be cool if it did.
Well, DK Metcalf is the current wide receiver 19. Obviously, there are some guys behind him that average more points per game but have played less games. But just to give you an idea, DK Metcalf right now is averaging more than Larry Fitzgerald and just slightly less than Odell Beckham Jr. So if you're talking about rookie production, it's been consistent throughout. Terry McLaurin is averaging more points, but it hasn't been consistent. If we looked at his box score, we would probably see a bunch of duds and some really big games. So
he's not a better rookie receiver, period.
Than DK.
Yeah, he's just been too consistent. I mean, they're like there's no other more consistent receiver. He's had one crappy game. The rest of them have been at least serviceable. McLaurin's had 4 nice games and then duds.
Before the season, if I told you that through 9 weeks, DK Metcalf would be averaging more fantasy points than Juju Smith-Schuster, would you laugh at me?
Oh yeah.
DK to GOAT.
No. The expectation, everybody coming in the season, Juju's the man, but
well, you remember what I said. You remember our podcast on the Steelers and how crazy I was for saying Juju's production was going to drop off?
It's dropped off, but I think he's finally starting to bounce back a little, though. There was going to be regression because he wasn't a number one receiver, and I don't know that he still is a number one receiver, but he's starting to get a little bit more consistent. So, and their team still sucks just as bad. So, I still like Juju long term. He's a young kid; he can grow.
Well, I do too. I wanted to say thanks, Hold Up there, for stopping by and sticking with us for most of the pod. So,
man,
we appreciate that. Okay, who went for Brad? Why don't you tell us another player? You've been just name dropping everybody, so I know you got somebody else in mind.
The only guy that I've talked about all year and haven't talked about yet on this podcast. He's not a starter anymore now that Nick Foles is back, but Minshew.
He has not looked good. We're talking about the last couple weeks, Brad, not the whole season. The last couple weeks.
I mean, the last 4 weeks he had one dud, one not great game, and then 2 pretty solid startable quarterback weeks. I mean, week 7 and 8, he averaged over 20 points a game, which isn't bad for a quarterback.
So you're just talking fantasy, though.
Yeah, I'm just talking fantasy at this point. But I think he's proven long term that he's probably one of the better quarterbacks in this draft class if he gets a chance to start after this season or if down the road. I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised. Good story, even better kid. I mean, works hard. The team really likes him, and I'm excited about his long-term potential. I mean, I've got him in a couple super flex spots, and and as soon as the news broke, guys were trying to trade for him. I know one of the guys on this podcast just traded for him in a super flex league we're in together. I'm holding on to him long term. I think he's got some value.
I was wondering if Taylor was going to notice that he was being talked about. He seems deep in thought.
Oh, he smiled. He knew I was talking about him.
Yeah,
because he just traded the golden tape that I couldn't get off of him because I don't have any more picks.
Here is the thing. This kid, you look at his regular box score and you're like, this kid played pretty well. 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's a good ratio. I'll take that from a rookie quarterback. And then you look at his fumbles, and he has 11. And you're like,
who has 11? Minshew?
Yeah.
My God.
He shouldn't have been running with the ball as much as he did, that's for sure, because he was not securing that thing.
Yeah, his ball security is no good. So you go from a +9 touchdown to turnover ratio when just factoring in the interceptions to a -2 when you factor in the fumbles. So it's, that's what he's got to do. He's got to, he did fine with everything else. His QB rating, which is, again, like Taylor talked about, yards per carry, is not a stat that you, judge everything off of. But his QB rating was 92.8. And what that tells us is that he was at least playing decent football. Fumbles were really the only thing that did this guy in. 235 yards rushing, almost 2,300 yards passing, in 9 games. That's on pace for, around 4,000 yards and 500, or 450 rushing. We'll take that out of quarterback all day. He's quarterback 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, what are your thoughts on Minshew other than holy shit, he fumbled 11 times?
Yeah, I actually did. I didn't love what I saw from him. I thought I was impressed based on what I was expecting, which wasn't much from him, to be honest. protected the ball well when it came to throwing it. Obviously, not when he was running. I guess I had no idea he had 11 fumbles. I felt like he projected more as a almost as like a, I don't know, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I saw from him, it felt like he was more of a game manager type of player, less risk taking type of guy. I know he took some shots to Chark here and there, but it seemed like it wasn't like a consistent production from him in that regard. So I'm wishy-washy on him for the future. I don't really even know that he projects as a starter in the NFL long term. But I don't know. It's going to be kind of messy with Foles back to see how Jacksonville handles that. Seems like unless Foles completely bubbles this away, he's going to have the starting job for the season. But do they try to move Foles in the offseason and move forward on a cheap rookie too? I don't know. But I probably didn't watch enough of him outside of the Bengals game and some highlights here and there to have a super strong opinion on him, to be honest.
And as a Bengals fan, your eye for quarterbacks, is questionable anyway. So
don't even start.
I never said I liked Andy Dalton. So.
I'm pretty sure Andy Dalton would be like the leading quarterback statistic guy in Chicago history if he would have played that length of time with Chicago. So, I mean, Jay Cutler is like our leading quarterback in all major statistics. So, I can't even speak on quarterbacks. Yeah. I do want to say, we're looking at Gardner Minshew. He averaged 16.8 points per game. That puts him Andy Dalton, 16.9. Jared Goff, 17.2. Jacoby Brissett, who a lot of people liked, 16.2. This can't be right. Drew Brees has only averaged 16 points. Oh, it's because he left the one game really early. Yeah.
With negative points. I started him that week.
Yeah. So that'll do it when that counts for a game. Derek Carr, 15.5. Daniel Jones, 15. So, really when you're looking at it, obviously your Lamar Jacksons and all those guys are like way above that. But I really like, and I've said this a lot, like if I can get a quarterback that I can play that averages around 17 points per game, I normally feel pretty good with that. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, like, he did a really good job. But, I don't know if he can hold on that. Going to look at another quarterback, though, when we are looking just purely at, quarterback ranks, Kyler Murray, who people were kind of like, Arizona, how good is Clink, how good is he going to be? Quarterback number 7 right now, averaging 18.9 points per game. Obviously, some guys in there with 8 games behind him. Jameis Winston averaging 19.5, whatnot. But what have your guys' thoughts been on Kyler Murray, Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what you expect from a rookie quarterback, he's had a lot of ups and downs. Had a couple 300-yard games to start the season, had a clunker against Carolina. He had the game a few weeks ago against the Giants with 104 passing yards. So the highs have been pretty high. The lows have been pretty low. It seemed like early on he was afraid to run the ball. I don't know if that was his own personal preference at the time or whether they just weren't encouraging it as much. He had first couple weeks of the season, 3, 8, and 4 rushes, and then the next 3 weeks he had 10, 11, and 10. So he started to pull the ball a little bit more, either by design or with scrambles. I think he's more comfortable operating that way. I don't think he's a bad passer, but I just think he's more comfortable kind of in a more flexible, on the move type of system, as opposed to just throwing from the pocket. I didn't have huge expectations for him for his rookie year just because there was so much change in that offense. A lot of new receiving options. I guess outside of Fitzgerald and Kirk, they had the 3 rookies or two rookies.
Isabella, Johnson, Butler.
Butler was out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. new coach. Didn't know what to expect out of DJ this year. So I wasn't expecting super solid production. I think I've gotten probably what I would have expected out of him with the highs and the lows, but I think he's shown potential to be a fantasy contributor long term.
Yeah, he's been interesting. I mean, he's had 5 games this year where he didn't throw a touchdown, but even though he's not throwing a touchdown, he's still producing decent numbers. Like the team is pulling it together and making some things happen, and they're moving in the right direction. Even though their team is really, I mean, there's a talent void in a lot of areas, the offensive line, across the defense, things like that. But Kyler Murray's exciting to watch, and I think he really adds a dynamic to that team that they needed. He's able to get out of trouble. I mean, 49ers game last week, I mean, they're, one of the top defenses in the league, and he took them to the limit. I mean, he competed. So I'm excited for the kid for the future. I mean, I know he's, everyone always talks about the height, but anymore in the NFL, you can make do with a shorter quarterback as long as the quarterback's got talent. We're seeing quarterbacks around the 6 foot and under be productive just fine. Long term, I think as long as he is smart when he gets out of the pocket and doesn't get hurt, and doesn't positions to get hurt, like Lamar Jackson's doing. They're designing a lot of runs for him, but he's making intelligent decisions with the ball and not getting hit in weird ways where he could hurt a leg or he's getting tackled low, he runs out of bounds or slides. If Murray follows in that footstep and makes smart decisions when he's out of the pocket, I think the kid could have a good career in fantasy and in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys. The thing is that, you talk about all the red zone trips they took and didn't get into the end zone. And I don't care if you're talking about rushing it or throwing it or whatever. There was definitely positive regression coming in that department. So, now recently they've been throwing for more passing touchdowns. They've been rushing for more touchdowns. Their rushing game may be better now than it was at any point this year. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm real excited about that offense. I have one more player. Do you guys have any other players that you wanted to talk about real quick?
Yeah, not really.
Noah Fant broke out this past week. 115 yards, touchdown, big long touchdown play. This was another guy that when you looked a little deeper than just the box score stats, you saw he was getting the opportunity. It just wasn't translating into production, and we got that quarterback change. Which Brandon Allen, I didn't watch the game, but it seems like he played half decent. Sutton still produced, Fant produced, and it was against the Browns though. So
yeah, but they have a good pass defense though. The Browns defense isn't their problem; it's their offense.
But it's still the Browns, so
true story.
So I don't know. It was nice to see because we've seen T.J. Hockenson. We talked about him the first time we talked about breakout rookies. T.J. Hockenson had that huge first week, like record-breaking week, but he's been kind of quiet since then. And the one thing, the thing that separated, I liked Fant more coming in for fantasy purposes because nobody's asking Noah Fant to block, and he's also an athletic freak. TJ Hockenson, especially when they play a team with a pass rush, he's going to run a lot less routes. Okay? It's kind of like O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard only runs routes on like 50% of the dropbacks because he is going to block a lot. And that just eliminates opportunity. So that's kind of come to fruition, but it was nice to see Fant finally get that breakout game because he had been getting that opportunity. It just hadn't translated yet. So I was real excited to see that. What were your thoughts, Taylor?
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical. I hate being that guy that's like, if you take away the one play, then look at the numbers, because you can't take away plays and you can't project if they would have made that one catch. But
yeah, right after he was talking about Devin Singletary a couple minutes ago.
It was a little, I mean, he had a 75 Fant had a 75-yard touchdown that was a little fluky in nature. But I mean, if you would have taken that out, he still would have had a 2 for 40, which somehow would have been his highest yardage of the year. So I didn't look at the game against Cleveland and think that really projects for anything for the rest of the year necessarily, as far as him like coming around to anything. I think I can't remember what Kyle Allen's exact final stat line was passing wise, but that touchdown to Fant was a little fluky, and then Sutton just made a ridiculous Randy Moss-esque catch for the other long
Sutton-esque quest catch.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Yeah, my bad.
Man.
He's Sutton somebody, and so I left that, like, from seeing a little bit of the end of that game. I left feeling like that offense was way more lucky last week than I think they will be going forward. So I think Fant probably the rest of the season is going to have a lot more of his usual 2 for 30, 3 for 20 type games. I still like him as a long-term option. As you mentioned, he's going to be a receiving threat out there. And whenever they get their quarterback situation figured out, whether that's Locke or surely not going to be Flacco next year, maybe they draft somebody, I'd be excited to see what he can do long-term. But I don't expect much from him the rest of this year.
Well, and the tough thing, at least in my mind, is the fact they're just not giving him very many targets. I mean, he's only had one game over 4 targets. Yeah, over 5 targets. I mean, he's probably the second best receiver on the team right now at this point, or the second most dynamic receiver. I mean, Deshaun Hamilton's not bad, but in my mind, it's Sutton, then probably one of your running backs, and then Fant. I mean, those are kind of like your big 3 playmaker wise when it comes out of catching. So I like Fant long term. I mean, I liked Hawkinson long term. Unfortunately, he just got concussed too many times this year, and that's going to become a problem for him. Then Fant may be the best tight end out of this draft class. I mean, who knows? So, good call. I mean, Fant's a solid player. Nice guy.
I know I've told Brad about airyards.com. Have you ever checked out airyards.com, Taylor?
Yes, it actually is going away after today. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, well, I just pulled it up and I was like, these aren't right. So
yeah.
What the heck happened to that dude?
The code he was using the R code he was using to scrape some NFL data isn't pulling in the right stuff for whatever reason, and he said he just honestly doesn't have the time to troubleshoot why it isn't working, and he didn't want to keep putting out inaccurate data. So
yeah,
it's RIP'd right now. I was on it last week, and then I saw him tweet that today.
Well, damn it. This is a site that I used a lot for, especially DFS purposes, because you could look and you could pull up, specific weeks, and you could see like what opportunity a player was getting, and you could just see that over the 3 weeks prior to that week, the air yards. You can look at, targets. Most tight ends don't get targeted a lot. You've got your volume guys like Kittle and Kelsey and Ertz, and Waller this year, but touchdown and opportunity is where most of your tight ends are going to make their bank, and you can just see that coming. I think that your young tight ends are going to be inconsistent anyway, and tight ends just in general, they're the highest variant position on the field anyway, because they're so touchdown dependent, that that variance is just real high. So well, that's sad, man. Josh Hermsmeyer is a beast, man. That was a great website.
Yeah, I was trying to find, I saw somebody else tweet it. They do something similar to that link.
Yeah, do that, because we'll want to share it with everybody too. So okay, so we have a couple questions. Anthony Nelson over on YouTube says, who do I start? Pick 2, 1 or both San Fran running backs, or Drake or Samuels. First off, I just want to say, Anthony, it's Wednesday. There's a bunch of news that's going to come out between now and Sunday morning. So take whatever answer you get on Wednesday with a grain of salt. These start-sit type questions, can change. So don't write him in just yet. But so you can start. I'm assuming he's talking Matt Breida, Tevin
Tevin
Coleman,
Coleman.
Kenyon Drake, or Samuels, and we need 2 of them out of that 4.
I'd probably go Tevin Coleman and Kenyon Drake if I had to pick 2.
Who's
Samuels.
Pittsburgh got this week? I don't know if it matters. I think Connor was.
They have the Rams.
Oh.
Yeah, they have the Rams. Yeah. Okay, well, definitely, and that's like why I had that little disclaimer at the beginning of this answer, because if Connor, do we know Connor's going to be in or out?
Questionable.
He's questionable, so we don't know about Connor. So I think Samuels right now, out of those 4 guys, is the one that I have to plug in, because that dude had 13 catches last week. Like, if you're in a PPR league, like I just think you have to start him right now if Connor is out. And then it goes down to me. Like right now, I probably don't want to start either San Fran running back, because I don't know which one it's going to be on a given week, right? Tevin Coleman was huge 2 weeks ago. Then Matt Breida got most of the work last week. It's so inconsistent there. But Drake's kind of in that same situation. But I think Drake's the best running back out of the 3, so I would probably go with him, even though he's got DJ that's going to be back. But at least Klink told us that Drake's going to be heavily involved. It's all coach speak, but right now I'd probably go Samuels and Drake.
Same.
Aaron Justice over on Facebook says playing from behind helps pad those stats a little also. True, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but garbage time is great for those teams that trail. I love those PPR points when your running back gets 4 catches.
Yeah.
Okay, so our last subject that we were going to talk about, and we're going to make it quick because we're an hour and a half in, just like normal. Brad was having a discussion today, and somebody was talking about players that are deemed untouchable. Should you really have untouchable players on your roster? And I think this is an issue that a lot of people have with fantasy, where they see the production of somebody, and let's just say Christian McCaffrey in 2019, and they think that there's no way they can win without that production. Yet I would say that probably, and I'll have to look, but the team in first place in most of my leagues probably don't have Christian McCaffrey. So, Brad, this was your topic, so let's get your opinion here first. Do you have any player right now that would be untouchable on any of your rosters?
There was never. Well, so in the conversation, CMC was the only name that somebody dropped as untouchable. My immediate response was, "There's never anyone untouchable. If you're willing to pay a high enough price, I will give you whatever stud player I have. Like right now, in the league that was having this chat, I'm really hurting at running back. I've kind of been streaming guys all season. Carlos Hyde, Adrian Peterson. There have been a couple weeks where I've had Ronald Jones sitting on there, and I've thought about starting. I mean, my running backs are rough, but my receivers are sweet. Juju, Sutton, Jarvis Landry, Corey Davis, D.D. Westbrook. I got a lot of guys. So, the guy was talking to me about who's untouchable on your roster if you're trying to get a running back, and I said nobody. I mean, if it's going to make my team better now and in the long term, because this is a league where, kind of sort of borderline playoff contender, nobody's untouchable. If I can get a play, like this year in the league that Taylor and I am in with the 96 teams, I've had Devontae Adams and Saquon, and I've traded both of them because I got enough that I was willing to move them. Like for me, it doesn't matter. If I think it gives me long-term better value, I'll trade anybody.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Taylor?
Yeah, my cop-out answer is nobody's really untradeable. except sometimes they become untradeable if you know you're not going to get your value back on them. So that's my only caveat as far as, so like last year, during the off season, I paid a hefty price for Odell Beckham right after he got traded to Cleveland. I knew it was okay. Then as owners came asking about other players on my team and they inquired, they asked, is Odell off limits? He technically wasn't untouchable, but I knew he was as close to untouchable as possibly could be because I knew nobody was probably going to be willing to overpay the amount I did. So the cop-out answer is no. I would never turn down somebody's interest in a player. Really, whether I'm in a rebuild or whether I'm a contender, I don't think any of that really matters because everyone's got a price. Um, if you follow my fantasy league on Twitter and you see some of these polls that get retweeted, granted, you don't know how serious some of those leagues are, but you'll see Chubb go for Chris Carson, 3 firsts, Aaron Jones, and Tyler Boyd, or something crazy that I think, wow, I never would have expected that. But if you immediately shut down somebody that's interested in Nick Chubb and you don't know that they're willing to give up all those pieces, you might miss out on some of these offers because guys fall in love with players and they're willing to pay a price for them, and you need to be willing to listen.
Your $1 Million Man references are popping up all over your statement. You kept saying everybody has a price, and I wanted to laugh maniacally at you, like old school WWF.
Okay, so what I was doing there, I wasn't ignoring you guys and whatnot, but I'm in 12 dynasty leagues, right? I don't play any redraft, so I can't, look at that. I'm sure in best ball it's a lot different than it is in dynasty. I went through all 12 of my leagues. How many first place teams, and I just went, like, I didn't go through every division in the 96 team leagues, just to be clear. I only went to my division, the division that I'm in. How many out of those 12 do you think Christian McCaffrey was on the top roster, the leading team? Just take a guess, Brad.
Going 0.
Right in between you guys. One.
Yeah.
1 out of 12. So what that tells me is that those teams are probably not very deep. One, the talent is completely top heavy, so they're getting a lot of points from him, but they're obviously not getting enough from everybody else. Now, obviously, I'm in first place in one division, and I'm like 9th in points. So shit happens sometimes in fantasy too that's just not explainable.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't the the thinking when you have a guy like that on your team that you have to have him to win is just completely wrong. Like, you don't have to have him. You need people scoring points throughout your whole roster. So if you have him, but the bottom 3 guys on your roster are scoring 4 or 5 points a week, you're probably losing because somebody else is going to have depth and they're going to be, all their guys are going to be scoring 10 to 12 points minimum, and then they've probably got somebody that's going to score 20, and those other guys make up for that gap. So, when I think about this and I hear like you can't trade a guy, like there are holds, and when we say that doesn't mean that they're not tradable. It just means that you're probably not going to get the value that you should because they've either been hurt or underperforming. Mike Evans at the beginning of the year, perfect example. Yeah, the people that sold Mike Evans after week 3 have got to be beating their head against the wall right now. So nobody's untouchable, and I don't care if you're talking redraft, dynasty, whatever. Um, Nobody's untouchable, but you have to, like, some of these. We had the discussion. People put up a couple polls, CMC, the other day in the Facebook group, and you know, here's a package, and then here's CMC. Which one do you take? And I'm sorry, but when you're talking about like 3 caliber players, 2 firsts and 2 seconds, like, I'm sorry, there's not a player in this world I'm going to take over that. It's just it's bad for your roster. You're doing your roster disservice if you won't trade Christian McCaffrey for that.
Can't argue that. No player is worth selling your team for or not selling your team for. I mean, your team deserves better.
Yeah, either side that you look at there, whether you're the guy selling and saying no, or you're the guy that's offering that package up, like, you just hurt your roster. I don't care what anybody says. I understand the guy scoring 30 points a week, but that doesn't last forever. It just doesn't. Like, think about it. Like, Barkley last year and Barkley this year. Like, he did not sustain what he did last year. He was the number one running back. The number one player in fantasy is rarely the number one player a year later. Just, it moves. It's fluid. It changes so much. So, the offers I seen, and I could dig through to find it, but it would take me a minute. But it was crazy. So, people, don't get stuck on certain players. It can hurt you bad, not just because that player might not be as good later, but just because the stuff you could add to your roster, the benefit that could have is a lot. So just keep your mind open. Don't get stuck and always keep an open mind when it comes to making moves. And then if you're on the other side, like, don't trade the farm for one player. Ask Mike Ditka how that works out. I know that Brad is old enough to know what I'm talking about. I'm not quite sure about Taylor though.
I know what you're talking about.
Don't be Googling it, Brad.
No. I know what you're talking about. Wedding dress on the Sports Illustrated cover. Sold the farm for Ricky Williams.
Okay. I like that you knew. I like that the young guys and their history. Yeah. Brad's the one Googling it right now.
Yeah, is that what I'm doing? I'm Googling it.
I'm very disappointed in you, Brad.
I see it in your glasses.
That's it. I was absolutely Googling it. No, I'm not Googling it. Come on now.
Brad's like, you're calling me out on national TV.
That's it. I'm calling Mike Dick on you.
Oh, the coach.
Stand for this. He'll tell you you're not allowed to be a Bears fan anymore. That's what he'll do.
I'm glad somebody let me out of it.
You've been in Indiana long enough. You're allowed to change teams, I think. Somebody told me.
No. I was born. The Colts weren't even an Indiana team yet.
I heard 10 years. When you live somewhere for 10 years, you can change your...
I was born in Indiana.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You can change your affiliation.
But the Colts weren't. The Colts can change their affiliation to me if they want. The Indianapolis Ricks. And I'm bringing
all over the place.
I'm bringing Pat McAfee back to be the head coach.
Let him be the brand manager.
Hell yeah! I just seen he's joining the XFL or something. That's awesome.
Yeah, an announcer, I think, for the XFL.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah.
He'd be smart. The XFL would be smart to get him. I mean, that dude's on fire right now.
Dude, literally, that dude's show is just awesome because he just tells it how it is, and he's got, he's not like a lot of the guys, right? A lot of the players are like real professional when they talk about it afterwards.
He's not.
Like, I mean, he is professional, but I mean, they like don't tell the dirty little secrets. They don't tell a lot of the cool little stories. Like Pat McAfee's just like, hell yeah, let's talk. So, Andy believes that the creator of The Simpsons is from the future, so it's awesome. All right, I think we've went long enough tonight. I know Taylor's probably like, Jesus, I should have said no to this. If I didn't have strep throat before,
it's always a pleasure.
Dude, we have so much fun. I love these 3-man podcasts. Just for everybody listening, if you're over on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. See, here we go. I told you guys.
There's our Cali fans.
Yep, Brad.
Going up.
As soon as we get ready to go, YouTube lights it up. I want to pick up Josh Reynolds, but should I drop Gallup or Deontay Johnson?
Why would you want to pick up Josh Reynolds?
Because Brandon Cooks is out.
I mean, that's still a lot. There's still a lot of mouths that are going to get those targets. I mean, with Woods and Kupp and Gerald Everett's been coming on. I guess Deontay Johnson if you were picking one, but I don't think you would drop Michael Gallup. That's for sure.
I think I'm keeping Gallup and Deontay Johnson. If I was dropping one, I would probably drop Gallup. But I don't know. Like I'd probably keep those two guys. Taylor?
Yeah, I'm a big Gallup fan. Reynolds, I'm a little concerned about just because that passing offense hasn't felt like it's been as prolific as it was before. I know Goff has put up some gaudy numbers, but Kupp has been the main beneficiary for that. I think Woods is going to clearly see an increase in what he was getting as far as piece of the pie. Tight ends have been more involved than they have in the past, so I'm not sure Reynolds is the number 3 or 4 option on that team is of great interest to me at the expense of those other guys.
My concern with Josh Reynolds is, one, I'll ask you guys this. Do you think Josh Reynolds is better suited for the slot or for the outside?
I don't know enough about him to comment.
Probably more the outside would be my guess. He's not as nearly as efficient as in the slot, if I remember correctly.
Well, last year what they did was they moved Robert Woods into the slot when Cooper Kupp was out, and Josh Reynolds played on the outside and was very underwhelming because he had a lot of hype when he was filling in for Cooper Kupp. And Robert Woods became that slot guy, and Josh Reynolds was like, nee. But hopefully, and I'll say this, not to put down your team in any way, but hopefully you can make a trade and upgrade that spot if you have to start one of these guys. Because I don't really trust any of these guys on a week-to-week basis.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine for filling in for a bye week or something, but yeah, I would try to make a move to upgrade that wide receiver spot or your flex spot if these are the guys you're relying on. Okay, the average scrub, we appreciate you stopping by. Once again, if you're over on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you know whenever we drop videos. We are working on a lot of different video ideas for video content. We have we want to start doing a lot of rookie 2020 rookie videos, so people can start getting their studying on for Dynasty rookie drafts in April. So we're going to start getting some of that stuff out. We're working on some more stuff. So YouTube is going to be pumping out some more content here whenever Brad does it. Uh, the website. There's been some changes, some upgrades, and some new article series that have started dropping. We've got some buy sells when they drop on the day they're supposed to drop. We've got some start sit articles. And Brad's like, you just keep throwing me under the bus on national TV. And then we have redraft and dynasty buy sells. And we've got some more stuff coming. I'm trying to write more. I've been so busy I haven't been able to write very many articles. But I try to do a couple of DFS articles every week. And then Sunday mornings, you can find me here on all your favorite platforms talking, Sunday morning start sits, injury news, all that stuff. From 10 to noon Eastern time before games start. And if there's a London game at 9:30 in the morning, I typically start a little bit late because nobody wants to watch me when they can watch football. And I know that, and I'm fine with it.
For now. That'll change because we're going worldwide.
Worldwide.
That's
now
right.
I can call them out on worldwide TV and not just national TV. Taylor, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
I live in Northern Kentucky, but on social media, you can find me at _ Taylor Cornell. My Twitter handle did recently change, so I'm so sorry if you've been looking for me. I'm under my old handle. That is at _ Taylor Cornell.
Brad, where can they find you?
I'm representing the brand, at least at this point. It's at RotoHeat Brad.
Everybody's threatening to leave me.
The main thing, though, is at RotoHeat Fantasy. Anytime we drop articles and we share them, we make sure RotoHeat Fantasy's tagged in there. So if you follow at RotoHeat Fantasy, you're going to see all the stuff that we got going on. So that's the best way to go about it.
Brad's like, don't use mine. I'm changing it next week. The average scrub.
Can't say it. I can neither confirm or deny.
The average scrub, I will say Mitchell Trubisky has not been good, but he has been good with Allen Robinson. Last week was a little rough. Last 2 weeks, but he had a tough matchup 2 weeks ago with Casey Hayward. So I will say that I'm not as worried about Allen Robinson as I am about the rest of the Bears offense. And that might just be because Allen Robinson is so good. I was just talking about this earlier. Could you guys imagine, like, what would happen if Allen Robinson had Drew Brees or Russell Wilson throwing to him? Like, this dude has had Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky, like, and just produces. Like, poor guy.
I lost my light.
All right, we're gonna call it a day anyway.
0-30 at Taylor's house.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
RotoHeat.com. Don't forget, make sure you subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the RotoHeat.com team. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to. Do it.